You think you can treat me like this just because you have money? Emma's voice was steady, but the anger simmered just below the surface. The room was tense, the clinking of silverware and murmurs from nearby tables suddenly feeling distant. Jackson Miller, billionaire CEO of one of the world's leading tech companies, was no stranger to privilege. But today, at this moment, he had crossed a line. I don't believe you understand who I am, miss, he sneered, not bothering to look up from his phone as Emma approached his table. His arrogant tone echoed through the quiet restaurant, where the most powerful figures in the city dined. Emma, the quiet waitress with no more than a black apron and a simple white shirt, had been nothing more than a shadow in his world. Until now, she had seen it all before, the entitled, the rude, the dismissive. But Jackson's words hit harder than any she had faced before. Excuse me, sir? Emma asked, her voice calm, professional. She was used to navigating these waters. But today, something was different. Today, Jackson had gone too far. I've been waiting for you to get a clue, Jackson said, his voice laced with mockery. You've been so busy staring at your notepad, you didn't even notice the contract I've been discussing with the client sitting next to you. But I'm sure someone like you wouldn't understand the complexities of business. Emma's gaze flickered to the client, then back to Jackson. She had no intention of letting this slide. Sir, she began, her voice firm but respectful. The contract you're referring to has an error in it. The figures you've been quoting are wrong. Jackson looked up, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. And what would you know about it? He challenged, his eyes narrowing with disdain. Emma's eyes met his, her expression unreadable. I know enough, she replied. For a moment, there was silence. The room seemed to hold its breath. Jackson raised an eyebrow, a smug look still plastered across his face. I think you're confused. This isn't your job. It's not your place. You're wrong, she said simply. I'm not confused, but you've been misinformed. Without a word, Emma reached for the contract that lay on the table beside him. Her fingers skimmed the figures. You've underquoted by $5 million. The terms you've presented are flawed. If you don't correct it, your company will be in breach of agreement within the next 48 hours. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Jackson's expression faltered for a moment, the arrogance draining from his face. He stared at Emma, the reality of her words sinking in. It wasn't just that she had caught him in a mistake, it was the way she had said it. No fear, no hesitation, just truth. For a long moment, Jackson remained silent. His grip on his glass tightened as he processed what had just happened. Who the hell are you? He muttered under his breath, more to himself than to her. Just someone who pays attention, Emma replied, her gaze unwavering. She had known what she was doing the moment she stepped up to him. This wasn't just about correcting a contract. It was about standing her ground. You may not know this, Mr. Miller, she continued, but people like me, people you look down on, we're not as invisible as you think. We notice things. We remember things. And we're not afraid to speak up when something's wrong. Jackson's smirk faded, replaced by an uncharacteristic unease. For the first time in a long while, he found himself on the receiving end of a lesson in humility. I didn't know, he said, his voice quieter now. The weight of his earlier words hung in the air. Emma didn't reply immediately. She just looked at him. It wasn't a look of contempt or anger. It was simply a look of understanding. She had seen this before. Men like him, who thought their power made them invincible. But today, he had been shown something different. Something real. After a long pause, she spoke again, her voice calm, but with an edge of finality. The next time you speak to someone like me, Mr. Miller, think twice. Because we're not just here to serve you. We're here to make sure your mistakes don't cost you everything. Emma watched as Jackson sat back in his chair, his eyes narrowing, trying to piece together the unexpected shift in power. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, the clinking of plates and soft murmurs from other tables fading into a background hum. He looked at her, trying to read her expression, trying to gauge whether she was bluffing. But there was no doubt in his mind. Now, Emma wasn't just another waitress. She was different. She had shown him something he wasn't prepared for. I can't believe you knew that, he said quietly, his usual bravado replaced with something less certain. I don't even know how you caught that mistake. Emma didn't smile. She simply met his gaze, the room still buzzing around them. But for a moment, it was as though the entire restaurant had disappeared. I pay attention, she said. Her voice was calm, steady. I've had to. People like you are quick to overlook things. People like me, people who work, people who have to make it on their own. I don't have the luxury of not knowing what's going on. Jackson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The tables around them had fallen silent as the moment stretched on. He had no idea how to react to her. The confidence she exuded, the quiet strength, it threw him off balance in a way he wasn't used to. He ran a hand through his hair, leaning forward slightly. So what happens now? He asked. His tone had softened, no longer condescending, but curious. Emma didn't immediately respond. Instead, she glanced down at the contract again, her fingers lightly tracing the edges. It was clear she had made a decision. She wasn't interested in the money he was offering, the apologies he might try to make. She didn't need them. What she needed was to make sure that the people like Jackson, who thought they could control everything with their wealth, understood that they couldn't buy respect. Now, she said, looking up from the contract. Now, you fix your mistake, Jackson. And you do it without me having to point it out. Jackson blinked, surprised by the firmness in her voice. It wasn't what he had expected from someone in her position. You've got guts, he muttered under his breath, more to himself than to her. Emma's eyes softened, but only just. No, she replied, her voice still steady but with a quiet conviction. I've got a job to do. And that job doesn't include letting you walk all over me or anyone else. I'm not asking for your gratitude, Jackson. I'm asking you to learn a lesson. And maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to respect you the next time we cross paths. For a long moment, Jackson said nothing. He looked at her, his thoughts racing. He had been humbled, no doubt about it. He was used to getting what he wanted, when he wanted, but this was different. Emma wasn't backing down, and she had just delivered a reality check he hadn't been prepared for. He could feel the shift within himself, a quiet, reluctant admiration rising as he realized just how much he had underestimated her. After what felt like an eternity, Jackson nodded slowly. I'll fix it, he said, his voice quieter now, without the usual arrogance. You have my word. Emma nodded once, the conversation over. She didn't need anything more from him. She had already done what she needed to do. With that, she turned to leave, her steps light and purposeful, her mind already shifting back to the tasks ahead. But as she walked away, she could feel Jackson's gaze on her, still lingering, and for the first time, she felt something shift within him, respect. It was a rare thing for someone like him, but Emma had earned it. And that, she realized, was all that truly mattered. Emma had just finished her shift when the call came. She had just clocked out, her body tired from the long hours of serving, her feet sore from running between tables in heels that didn't quite fit her. But the day had ended with something unexpected. As she gathered her things, ready to head out into the cold night, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. Curiosity got the better of her. You were right. I fixed the deal. Thank you. The message read, signed simply, Jam. For a moment, Emma just stared at the screen. Jackson Miller. He had followed through. He had kept his word. A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. She wasn't sure what she expected after the encounter at the restaurant, but she hadn't expected him to actually act on it. She had expected him to forget, or brush it off, or even be offended. But no, Jackson had taken her advice seriously. He had corrected the error, and he was acknowledging it. She let out a quiet sigh, tucking the phone back into her bag. Maybe it was a small victory. Maybe it meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. But for Emma, it meant something. It meant that, for once, her voice had been heard. Her worth had been recognized. As she stepped out of the restaurant, the cold air hit her, sharp and biting, but it didn't bother her as much as it usually did. She pulled her coat tighter around her and began the walk home, her mind still reeling from the day's events. The walk was long, but she didn't mind. She was used to it. She had always been used to taking the longer route, the one that gave her time to think, to breathe, to let the weight of the world settle around her. But tonight, the weight felt lighter. Maybe it was because of Jackson's message. Maybe it was because, for once, she didn't feel invisible. The streetlights flickered above her, casting long shadows on the pavement, and the sounds of the city seemed distant, muffled by the thick winter air. She walked through the quiet streets, lost in thought, when a voice broke through her reverie. Hey, Emma. She turned to see John, the man who had intervened during her confrontation with Jackson earlier. He was standing a few feet behind her, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. Emma stopped, surprised to see him. She hadn't expected him to follow her out. "John," she said, her voice cautious. "What's up?" He stepped forward, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I just wanted to check in. I saw what you did today. That was impressive." Emma felt a flush of warmth spread across her cheeks, but she quickly brushed it off. "It wasn't a big deal," she said, her voice sounding smaller than she intended. John shook his head. "It was. Trust me. You stood your ground with someone like Jackson Miller. That takes guts." Emma didn't know how to respond to that. It wasn't something she had thought about at the time. She had just acted. It had felt like the right thing to do. But hearing it from someone else made it feel different. She shifted on her feet, feeling a little awkward. "Thanks," she said finally. "But I'm just doing my job." John chuckled softly. "Your job?" he asked, his tone light, but with an edge of seriousness. "Emma, you're more than just a waitress. You're a force." She raised an eyebrow, not sure what to make of his words. "A force?" she repeated, incredulous. John's smile widened, and he nodded. "Yes, you don't realize it yet, but you have a presence. People listen when you speak." And today, Jackson learned that the hard way. Emma looked away, suddenly feeling self-conscious. She hadn't done it for recognition or praise. She had done it because it was the right thing to do. Because someone had to stand up for herself, for people like her. She had spent too many years being overlooked. "I just don't want anyone to think I'm trying to get something out of it," she said quietly. John tilted his head, studying her. "And you're not. You're just being yourself. That's what people respect." Emma didn't reply right away. She was used to flying under the radar, doing her job, and fading into the background. But John's words kept echoing in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to her than she realized. "Anyway," John said, breaking her train of thought, "I just wanted to say that. Keep doing what you're doing." Emma smiled, grateful for his encouragement. She didn't know where it would lead, but she appreciated it. "Thanks, John. I'll see you around." He gave her a nod and turned to leave. Emma stood there for a moment, watching him walk away. Then, she continued her journey home, the weight of her thoughts lighter than it had been when she started. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe it too. The next day, Emma walked into work with a feeling she couldn't quite place. The usual dread of another long shift was there, but something else lingered, something unfamiliar. It was like a quiet confidence, a strength she hadn't known she had until yesterday. As she made her way through the back door of the restaurant, her manager, Sarah, waved her over. "Hey, Emma, got a minute?" Sarah's voice was casual, but there was something in her tone that made Emma pause. "Sure," Emma replied, setting her bag down on the counter. Sarah motioned for her to follow into the back office. As they entered, Emma saw Jackson Miller sitting at the desk, his tall frame leaning back in the chair, one leg crossed over the other. He was staring at the computer screen in front of him, but glanced up when he heard them enter. Emma's heart skipped a beat. The last time they had spoken, he had been nothing but arrogant and dismissive. But today, he looked different. His usual smugness was gone, replaced by an expression that almost seemed humble. "Emma," he said, standing up as she walked in. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I just wanted to thank you again for your help yesterday." Emma raised an eyebrow, unsure of what was happening. She had never seen him like this before. "I'm glad you figured it out," she said, keeping her tone neutral. "It was the least I could do." Jackson nodded. "It wasn't just about the contract, though. I realized something else, something more important. You taught me a lesson yesterday, Emma. A lesson I won't forget." Emma didn't know what to say. She stood there, waiting for him to continue. "I've spent my life thinking I could control everything, that money was the answer to everything," Jackson continued, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "But you showed me that respect, true respect, is earned, not bought. And I owe you an apology for how I treated you." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She wasn't used to this kind of apology, especially from someone like Jackson. She had expected him to forget about the whole thing, maybe even brush it off. But here he was, admitting that he was wrong. "It's okay," Emma said quietly. "I didn't do it for an apology. I just did what I thought was right." Jackson smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I know, but that's what made it matter. And that's why I want to make it up to you." Emma blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. Jackson leaned forward, placing a business card on the desk in front of her. I know you've been working hard, trying to make ends meet. I've got a position opening up at my company. I want you to consider it. Emma stared at the card, unsure if she had heard him correctly. A position, she echoed. In your company? Jackson nodded. I've been paying attention to more than just your ability to fix contracts, Emma. You've got potential, and I think you deserve a chance to do something bigger than serving tables. Emma's mind raced as she looked at the card. This was insane. A chance to work for someone like Jackson Miller? The same Jackson Miller who had looked down on her just a day ago? I don't know what to say. Emma finally managed. You don't have to say anything right now. Just think about it. I'm serious about this. You've earned it. Emma took a deep breath. This was more than she had ever imagined for herself. She had always dreamed of more, but never thought it was possible. Now, she was being offered something she could hardly believe. She had come into work expecting another routine shift, but now everything had changed. I'll think about it, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jackson nodded. Take your time. Just know that the offer is there if you want it. As he turned to leave, Sarah stepped forward, a small smile on her face. You've got guts, Emma. I knew there was something about you. Emma smiled, but the weight of the moment settled heavily on her shoulders. She had always known she was capable of more. But this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. She watched as Jackson left the office, his presence lingering in the room long after he had gone. Emma stood there, holding the business card in her hand, a mix of excitement and uncertainty swirling inside her. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. But now, the real question was, what would she do with it? Emma sat at her small kitchen table, the business card Jackson had given her resting in front of her. She had spent the past hour staring at it, unsure of what to do next. The offer was real, and it was everything she had dreamed of. A chance to work with Jackson Miller's company, to step into a world far beyond serving tables. But doubts kept creeping in, pulling at the edges of her excitement. Was she really ready for this? Was she capable of leaving behind everything she had known for something completely different? She had worked hard to get to this point, but she had never been given an opportunity like this before. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her chest, and for a moment, she wished she could just ignore the card, pretend it wasn't there. But she couldn't. She had come too far to back out now. Her mind flashed back to the moment in the restaurant when she had stood up to Jackson, when she had demanded respect, not for the job she did, but for who she was. She had known, deep down, that she was meant for more. This was the moment that proved it. The question was, did she have the courage to step into that future? The sound of her phone vibrating on the table interrupted her thoughts. She glanced at the screen to see a text from Sarah. I heard about the offer. Just wanted to say, you deserve it, Emma. Don't second-guess yourself. Emma smiled softly, grateful for Sarah's support. She had always been there for her, even when things got tough. Sarah had seen something in her that Emma had only recently started to see in herself. But this was different. This was a chance to prove to herself that she wasn't just another waitress, another person who faded into the background. She had the potential to do something incredible. Emma took a deep breath, picking up the business card once more. She had spent so long trying to fit into a world that never quite accepted her. Maybe it was time to stop trying to fit in and start creating her own path. Her fingers hovered over her phone, and she typed a message to Jackson. I'm interested. Let's talk more about the position. As she pressed send, she felt a rush of adrenaline. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about taking control of her life, making the choices that would shape her future. The message was sent, and there was no going back. She had made the decision. Now, all she had to do was take the next step. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a response from Jackson. Looking forward to it, Emma. Let's set up a meeting. I'm glad you decided to take the leap. Emma smiled to herself, the knot in her stomach loosening just a little. The leap. It was a leap of faith, yes, but it was also a leap of opportunity. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control. She looked out the window at the city skyline, the lights twinkling in the distance. This was only the beginning. The next chapter of her life was waiting for her to write it. And she was ready. She stood up, grabbing her coat, and heading out the door. There was no turning back now. Emma was ready for whatever came next. Emma arrived at the office building early, her nerves fraying with every step she took toward the elevator. The glass doors in front of her loomed like a reminder of everything she had yet to prove. She had never been in a place like this before. Sure, she had served the wealthiest of clients, but this was different. This was her chance to step into their world, to make her mark. As the elevator door slid open, Emma stepped inside, taking a deep breath. She pressed the button for the top floor, and as the elevator ascended, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision she had made. Was she really ready for this? What if she wasn't? What if she failed? She shook her head, trying to push the doubts aside. She had worked too hard to let fear hold her back now. When the doors opened, she stepped into the sleek, modern lobby, greeted by a receptionist who immediately led her to a conference room where Jackson Miller was waiting. He was standing by the large glass windows, looking out at the city below. He turned as he heard her approach, his expression unreadable. "Emma," he said, his voice steady. "I'm glad you could make it." She nodded, offering a small smile, though her heart was racing. "Thanks for having me," she replied, walking toward the table where he gestured for her to sit. Jackson didn't waste any time. He leaned forward, looking her directly in the eyes. "I want to be upfront with you. This job won't be easy. It's not your typical office role. You'll be working with high-level executives, managing critical deals, and handling things most people wouldn't even dream of. You need to be ready for pressure, for tough decisions." Emma sat up straighter, meeting his gaze. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. She had no idea if she really was, but she couldn't back down now. Jackson studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good. I believe you're capable of more than you realize. This job is about more than just numbers or contracts. It's about influence. Knowing when to act, when to speak, when to listen. It's a skill you've already shown. I've seen it." His words caught her off guard. She had never thought of herself as someone with influence. She had always just done her job, kept her head down, and hoped she was doing enough. But here, in front of Jackson, she realized something. He wasn't just offering her a job. He was offering her a chance to truly test her limits, to push herself in ways she hadn't imagined. For the first time, she felt something stir inside her. Excitement, confidence, the belief that maybe, just maybe, she was capable of more than she had ever thought. Jackson leaned back in his chair, breaking the silence. "I won't sugarcoat it. There will be times when you'll feel out of your depth, times when you'll question if you belong. But you need to remember one thing. People like you and me, we don't wait for opportunities. We create them." Emma nodded slowly, taking in his words. It was exactly what she needed to hear. She wasn't just going to step into this job, she was going to own it. She had always been underestimated, always had to fight for what she wanted. But now, it was time to stop fighting for scraps and start taking what was hers. Jackson stood up and extended his hand. "Welcome aboard, Emma. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do." She stood as well, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you, Jackson. I won't let you down." As she left the room, her heart was pounding in her chest, but this time, it wasn't out of fear. It was anticipation. She had taken the leap, and now there was no turning back. The world was hers for the taking, and she wasn't going to waste a single second of it. Emma's first week at Jackson's company felt like a whirlwind. She was thrown into meetings with executives, discussing contracts, strategies, and deals she never thought she'd be a part of. At first, it was overwhelming. There were times when she felt like a fish out of water, unsure of herself in a world so different from the one she had known. But each day, she found herself adapting. She started asking questions, speaking up when something didn't sit right with her, and gradually, her voice was no longer just another background noise in the room. Jackson, who had been watching her from afar, seemed pleased with her progress. He had been right to believe in her. Emma was beginning to see her own potential. It wasn't just about numbers or reports anymore. It was about influence, about stepping into her own power. She remembered his words when he first hired her. People like them didn't wait for opportunities. They created them. And she was finally starting to do that. One afternoon, as she was going over some financial reports in her office, Jackson walked in. "How are you settling in?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Getting the hang of things," Emma replied, looking up from the papers on her desk. "There's a lot to take in, but I'm managing." Jackson nodded, his eyes scanning the room before landing back on her. "I can tell. You're doing great." Emma smiled, feeling a small sense of pride. "Thanks. It's not easy, but I'm learning." Jackson walked over and sat across from her. "You've done more than just learn. You've started to make an impact. I've noticed the way you handle yourself in meetings. People are starting to listen to you. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had worked hard, but hearing it from him felt different. It wasn't just her doing the job, it was her excelling at it. I've been trying to take your advice to heart, she said, her voice steady. Not waiting for the right moment, but creating it. I'm learning that I don't have to wait for permission to speak up or take action. Jackson leaned back in his chair, studying her for a moment. That's the key, Emma. You've got something most people don't, the ability to take initiative. That's why I hired you, and that's why you'll go far. Emma felt a warmth spread through her. She had come so far since that first day, when she had stepped into his office, unsure of herself, unsure if she belonged. Now, she felt like she was starting to find her place. I've been thinking, Jackson continued, breaking her thoughts. There's a big project coming up. It's a huge opportunity for the company, and I want you to lead it. Emma blinked, taken aback. Me? Yes, Jackson replied, his expression serious. You've proven that you can handle the pressure. This project requires someone who can think on their feet, someone who isn't afraid to make bold decisions. And I believe you're the right person for it. The weight of his words settled on her, and for a moment, Emma was speechless. Leading a project like this was a massive responsibility. But she had come this far, hadn't she? She had worked her way from the bottom, from being a waitress, to sitting in this chair, having a conversation with Jackson Miller, someone who had once seemed untouchable. She took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. I won't let you down, she said, her voice firm with determination. Jackson smiled, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. I know you won't. As he left her office, Emma sat back in her chair, her mind racing. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment to prove herself, to show everyone, not just Jackson, but herself, that she was capable of so much more than anyone had ever expected. The opportunity was hers, and she wasn't going to waste it. Emma stood in front of the large conference table, her hands slightly trembling as she adjusted the papers in front of her. The room was filled with executives, their eyes expectant, but she was focused on the task ahead. This was it, the big project Jackson had trusted her to lead. She had spent days preparing, gathering data, analyzing the market, and strategizing. It was her moment to show them what she was made of, to prove that she wasn't just a waitress-turned-employee. She was ready for this. As the meeting began, Emma took a deep breath, standing taller as she addressed the room. Her voice was calm, professional, and firm. Good morning, everyone. Today, we're here to discuss a critical opportunity that will set the direction for our company's next phase of growth. She paused, scanning the faces around the table. I've analyzed the data, and I believe we have a unique chance to expand into a new market that has been largely untapped. She moved toward the projector, clicking through the slides that displayed her research. Our competitors are focusing on a single demographic, but I've identified a broader audience with the potential to increase our revenue by 30% over the next 2 years. The room was silent for a moment, and Emma's heart raced. She could see the skepticism in their eyes, the doubt. But she pushed forward. Here's the plan, she continued. We'll need to adjust our product offerings to align with the needs of this new market. I've already reached out to potential partners who have the infrastructure we need to scale quickly. We'll start with a targeted marketing campaign, and within 6 months, we'll measure the results and adjust accordingly. She glanced at Jackson, who was sitting at the end of the table, his arms crossed but his gaze locked on her. She didn't let his presence intimidate her. She knew this was her time. I'm confident in this approach, she concluded, but it will require all of us to be on the same page. It's a bold move, but if we execute it well, we'll see a significant return on investment. The room was still, but this time, the silence felt different. The executives exchanged glances, and Emma could feel their hesitation starting to shift. Then, one of them, a senior VP, spoke up. You're suggesting we invest resources in a completely new direction. This is a huge gamble. Emma nodded. Yes, but sometimes, taking risks is the only way to grow. If we stay comfortable, we'll be left behind. Another executive, a woman who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. I've seen the numbers. You've done your homework, Emma. This could work. Emma's chest swelled with pride. It wasn't just the numbers anymore. It was the fact that they were starting to believe in her. Jackson cleared his throat, breaking the tension in the room. I agree, he said, his voice steady. I've seen the work Emma's put into this. She's thought of every angle, and I trust her judgment. Let's move forward with this plan. Emma felt a rush of relief. The approval was the validation she needed. This was more than just a project. It was the moment she had been waiting for. As the meeting continued, Emma took charge, leading the conversation with confidence, offering solutions, and answering questions. By the end of the session, the plan was set in motion, and she knew it was just the beginning. As the executives filed out of the room, Jackson stayed behind. "You did well," he said, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Emma nodded, grateful for his support. "Thank you, Jackson. I couldn't have done it without the team." "It was your vision that got us here," he replied. "You've got a bright future ahead of you, Emma. Keep pushing." She watched as he walked out, leaving her alone. In the room, the weight of the responsibility hadn't hit her yet, but as she looked out the window, she realized something. She was no longer the same person who walked into this building a week ago. She had proven herself, and this was only the beginning. It had been 2 months since Emma had taken charge of the big project, and things were moving faster than she had anticipated. The new market strategy was already showing signs of success, and the team was beginning to rally behind her. Emma had become a key player in the company, no longer just a newcomer, but someone with real influence. Her days were packed with meetings, phone calls, and strategy sessions. She had barely noticed how quickly the time had passed, but now, standing in front of her office window, she could see the skyline outside, the same view she had once dreamed about. She had come a long way. As she turned to face the room, she saw Jackson standing by the door, watching her. "You're doing it, Emma," he said with a rare smile. "This project is on track to be a success. I'm impressed." Emma felt a wave of pride wash over her, but she didn't let herself linger in the moment. There was still work to be done. "Thanks, Jackson," she said, trying to keep the focus on the task at hand. "But we're not there yet. We still have a long way to go." Jackson raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by her humility. "That's exactly why I brought you into this company. You understand the bigger picture." Emma smiled faintly, her mind already jumping to the next steps. "I'm just doing my job," she replied. "But I've learned a lot from this experience. It's not just about the numbers or the strategies. It's about knowing when to take risks and when to play it safe." Jackson nodded. "You're right, and I think you've learned how to balance both." He stepped into the room and sat across from her. "I want you to take on more, Emma. You've shown me that you're capable of leading at a higher level. I have another project coming up, and I think you're ready to take the lead on it." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Another project? She had just finished leading the biggest one of her career, and now Jackson was offering her even more responsibility. "Are you sure?" she asked, though the question felt more like a formality. She knew what she wanted. "I'm sure," Jackson said, his tone firm. "You've earned it." Emma took a deep breath. This was it. The next big step in her career, the opportunity she had worked for her whole life. She wasn't going to let this slip away. "I'll do it," she said with a new sense of certainty. "I won't let you down." Jackson smiled, clearly satisfied with her response. "I know you won't. You've already proven you're capable of handling anything that comes your way." As he stood up to leave, Emma felt a surge of determination. She had taken every opportunity that came her way and turned it into something more. She wasn't just a waitress who had climbed the ladder. She was a leader, someone who had built her own path to success. She had the respect of her colleagues, the trust of her boss, and now, she had the chance to shape the company's future. The world outside the window seemed to open up before her. She wasn't just standing in front of it. She was ready to step into it. Emma knew there was no going back now. This was her time, and she was ready for whatever came next.